And basically at that point, we had a court date set and we were like, okay, we are going to do one more kind of Hail Mary. We're going to lay everything out for them. And then either they're going to drop the suit or we have to be prepared to go to litigation.
What's going on, guys? We've got a really cool episode for you. This is a conversation with myself, Zach, and Micha about one of the big things that happened to us in our first year of business. It was a really scary time where we got sued by this billion-dollar company, one of our biggest competitors. It's a great episode with hopefully some good takeaways in terms of how you can get yourself, through these intense situations that can happen early on in business. Hope you enjoy it.
All right.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
It's good. Yeah. Just coming off our pre-podcast routine, which should we keep that a secret?
We'll keep that a secret. You have to follow us on Instagram.
Oh, they don't know what it is.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little sweaty right now.
It's just like everybody, we always start the podcast. Oh, okay.
It's after Foreplay. But yeah, so today we've got Micha on the podcast.
Welcome, Micha.
Welcome, Micha.
This is your first podcast, right?
This is my first podcast, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, super excited.
So just make sure you hold the mic up nice and close.
Up
You
yeah.
can pull it towards yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Everyone can hear me nice and good.
Cool.
Awesome.
I want to hear your beautiful voice. Yeah.
So,
sex voice today.
Yeah, so Micha, you and I are business partners for how long now?
Ooh,
28 years?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
No, we met each other back something like 3 or 4 years ago.
It'll be 4 years in January that we started working together at Lifetime.
Okay.
And then we were there for just under a year together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
It has. Shane and I used to, our cubicles were next to each other, so we shared a wall. So whenever we were upset or bored, we would throw paper and shit at the other person. And occasionally then we would leave and go for a midday drink.
nice.
Yeah, middle of the day.
Nice.
Middle of the
Nice.
sales day.
1 p.m. Bellinis.
I'm sure that's definitely in like Lifetime's like code of conduct too, for sure.
Yeah,
That's very,
absolutely.
it's good for you.
Yeah. That was an intense job. I can't believe we used to work in cubicles.
Yeah.
That's so
like
funny.
6 to 7 days a week too. Like
Fuck.
you weren't getting days off.
You know what's
12-hour
fucked about
days.
cubicles is that they make them gray. Like like you could make them any color. It doesn't cost more to make them any color.
There must be some reason for making them gray.
Yeah.
To suck out your soul.
To suck out your
probably.
soul. Yeah.
So they know. So you know that they know they own you.
It was so intense because you're making these sales calls and you have people in your office and you're trying to sell them and everybody else can hear you.
Oh,
And
right.
it's like, oh, is he going to close them? Is he going to close them? And then he's like, oh, he's getting turned down.
Whoever was on a sale, everyone else would be in the next cubicle, like hunched over, being like, "Oh my God, someone go in and like give him back up." Like,
Yeah, or we'd all be in the cubicle next to him, like all with our ears pressed up against the wall, like hearing
Do
it.
little good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
And we had these little microphones. We had walkie-talkies. It was so weird. And we dressed like the guys. Shane wore a suit every day. I was wearing heels. It fucking sucked. Walking around that gym all day in heels. And then every time someone would be like, made a sale, be like, boom, fire. And everyone would celebrate on the walkie-talkies.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we used to fuck with each other pretty hard.
Yeah,
we had some fun strategies.
Yeah.
Like we'd get like walk-ins that come in and then there's like an ups rotation to deal with somebody walking into this. Lifetime's a health club. In case people don't know that. Mm-hmm. And so we'd have to try to sell these people memberships. Yeah. And so like a walk-in would come in and then you're up on the rotation and then you got to go through like a full sales process with them. And we used to do fun creative stuff like, oh, these are two guys. Like I'm going to sub one of this. I'm not going to go. I'm going to get Rosa to go because she's going to be able to use the girl card with them. And then Rosa, I'll split the sales with you since I was the one that was up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. So we were doing that. We hated it. We hated our lives. Started getting drinks too often during the day.
Oh, yeah. It went from like we were celebrating to hitting this month. It was like, woo, and to fuck my life, get me out of here right now. Actually, we barely hit quota 1 month we hit. And it was like the last possible minute. It was like 11:30 p.m. and everyone's celebrating on the last night of the month that we hit quarter. And Shane puts me up on his shoulder and goes to squat me and stands up and his entire pants are ripped from like top down across.
I used to buy suits too tight.
So when you guys were like at Lifetime and you said you like hated yourself, is that like retrospective? You like my life sucked, or like in the moment did you actually have those thoughts? You're like, this sucks. Like when you would wake up, you'd put on your thing and then you'd go to work and be like, this sucks? Or is it like more like retrospectively looking back?
Personally, at the beginning, it was a lot of fun and like I loved it. We were working long days, but the team just like jived so well and everyone got along and like we just had fun together that it sucked in the moment. It was like, this is hard, or we have to make 100 calls today to be on ups tomorrow, and that was annoying, but it was a lot of fun. Towards the end though, it started to get to a point where it was like, okay, this really sucks. You're working 6 or 7 days a week because we were 100% commission.
Right.
And also, if you're not hitting certain quotas each day, then you don't get those walk-ins the next day. You don't get as many leads. And so the job becomes more difficult. So if you're not performing every day, it just makes every other day harder to hit your quotas. And so it was frustrating because you would start to burn out and it's like, but I can't take a day off because if I take a day off, I'm going to miss sales and I'm going to miss walk-ins. And so you were working 6-7 days, sometimes 12 hours because we all had designated times that we would come in, but you basically stay until your appointments show, you stay until you close a deal. And so towards the end, it got to the point, I think, same for Shane, is that it was just like, I don't even want to go in anymore.
Right.
I remember pulling my car over on the highway being like, I can't fucking do it. I can't do it again. Like, this is just way too much. And like, I used to work in life insurance and that was hard. I felt like a terrible person, but this was also just like emotionally draining towards the end.
Right.
Yeah.
There was just, it got to the point where we were so pinched on expectations. They would do and we were absolutely micromanaged. Like we had to get in there some days and they had this system where we had to mark down to every half hour what we'd be doing in the day. And then we had expectations for call volume and the amount of people you were talking to. And they monitored every call, the durations of calls. And so, you know, you'd come into the office and the manager would call you in his office and be like, so yesterday you had a call that only lasted 6 seconds. Why did that only last 6 seconds? Were you fake calling somebody where did it not? Like it was so micromanaged, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the expectations were high. It was positioned to be a super hyper competitive environment. So you'd love everybody, but at the same time,
you're killing each other. Like
you're absolutely killing each other. So like we just started building so much animosity towards each other, and we had terrible managers at some point. So there was a lot that went wrong, but we loved that job.
Yeah. It was a great experience. And I'm happy that I didn't stay. And I think Shane, you probably agrees. Like we didn't stay longer. Like we recognized when it got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm so unhappy. There are better things out there for us, and just kind of left. Like I know some people who stayed much longer. Right. And I'm just
there's some people that get stuck there.
Yeah.
People get into these high paying jobs and then it's just like the pain of leaving isn't worth the pain that they're going through there.
Because they don't know where else they're going to find a paycheck like that.
Yeah. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Do you remember there was this one point so that we'd have to sell them the membership, and then after we'd sell them the membership, which was hard because it's like 5 times the price of any other gym, then there'd be like a bunch of stuff we'd have to sell them on afterwards, and we'd have to book like their first personal training session with them. And there was one point where if you didn't book the personal training session with them, then you lost the whole pay of the membership. So you'd have to call a person. So you'd go through this person for like an hour and a half selling them a membership. They just want to leave. And then you got to be like, okay, I'm going to call a personal trainer down here to schedule you in. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. And if they didn't do it, you lost all your commission on the sale. And so you're trying to get them in. And then there was one point where one of our team members forgot and had to run out into the parking lot to try to chase the guy down to schedule his personal training session. Yeah, it was stupid,
tough.
but
and we used to have a thing called stand up, which was very interesting for a gym. So like Lifetime's not just a regular gym. It's like, think of like a country club, but like for like an everyday person. So or not everyday, like young professionals or professional families. And so we would have these stand-ups where every day at 2 p.m. the personal training managers and the sales team would be in a room, and we would each have to get up and talk about the person that we signed the day before. And then we would also do a 14-day review. So it's like, okay, it's been 14 days and they didn't show up to their personal training session. Why didn't they show up? They don't have notes on their account. Like, tell us all about them. Why aren't there notes on the account? And if you didn't have a green, like if they weren't green lit up saying that they did all these things, they bought the package, they went to their personal training session, they bought PT, then they would be grilling you as a sales rep, being like, what did you do? Did you call them? Did you get referrals? And you're up there trying to present to everyone like this is my new member. And it was so intense that people then, the personal trainers would be like, why did you book them in with this person? You should have booked them in. It's like, man, I was just trying to book them in so I got the sale.
Yeah, it was intense. And we can't, I wouldn't want to just trash Lifetime and leave it at that, because there was a ton of really good stuff that I think each of us got out of that. Lifetime Athletic has an awesome training program for sales reps. Like, they take the sales rep position very seriously there.
They send you to Minnesota.
Yeah, so they hire you, and then they send you to their headquarters with all the other salespeople for all the different locations, which they have like hundreds of locations. And then you go through this intensive sales training. It feels like The Apprentice.
It does.
That's what it feels like. You have to go through real world situations, classroom stuff, and they're constantly testing you, putting you through this.
And if you don't pass a test, then you fail and you get sent home. So you have to pass every single test. Each day is a different thing. So one day it's like the buddy system where someone comes in with a guest and how do you treat the buddy, or you get to walk in. You have to do a gym tour, and they make you do all of that. And if you fail one, you get sent home. So there are people who failed on the very last day, like a minor test, and then they wouldn't get certified to be an account manager, and they would get sent home. And either their club can decide if they want to keep them on and resend them to next month's training, or if they just say, okay, sorry, you didn't get the job. Damn. So after you get hired, you have to go through this intensive sales process, which is amazing because first of all, you get to meet some really great people, but then it really, like, that is the best training I've ever had for any job that I've ever had. Like, even at CIBC, like, this training was the best because it was real world experience and it actually made you feel like a professional. And typically people look at a job at a gym as like, oh, you worked at a gym. But I guarantee you, we probably got more professional experience than most people, most millennials in the job market right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was
cool.
good time.
It was good times.
So now,
facility
no longer
too.
slinging gym membership and slinging yoga pants, not far off.
Yoga pants, yeah.
Not far off. Yeah, that's what it evolved to. Yeah. So I left Lifetime having, so there was the manager at the time told me that I was gunning for this assistant sales manager position for like months, and I'm grinding and sucking the corporate dick basically to try to get this position. And then like 2 months into it, when I was supposed to get it, he goes, yeah, you know, we wanted to get it to you, but the manager has said that he wants to hold the Twinkie or the carrot in front of you a little bit longer. And I was like, I am not a fucking mule. That was my stand with that. I'm like, this is not for me. I can't do this corporate environment thing. I don't want to be pushing for somebody else's business.
Yeah,
and
which is funny because a different manager was telling me the same thing.
Those fuckers. Yeah. And so I had done that, and I'd been around some other business people who I could see building something tangible. And I think that's where the disconnect was for me. It was like, yeah, you're making great money, you're getting great experience, but when you leave here, there's nothing that you have. You have the person that you became, which is huge, but you're not building something. You're not building an empire, a business, or a brand. And I saw other people doing that, and I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to do something else. So that's when I left with no real plan of what to do. What was the point that you had eventually left there?
So it was within like a couple of weeks after you, because we were actually both talking about possibly doing our MBAs, and we are like, maybe we'll go back to school. There's so many other things that we could be doing. And I wasn't sure what my next step was going to be. And at this point, I felt pretty beaten. Like, I went into the job in January having so much confidence, like knowing who I was and feeling really good about myself. And then towards the end, it's like you're one of the top performers on a sales team, hitting quota, exceeding your numbers, having these like just killing it, and then for some reason you feel like a piece of shit, and it's so hard to comprehend how you could be good at your job but still feel like great at your job, still feel like a piece of shit. And so I got to a point, it was a couple of weeks after you, and I was like, fuck, Shane left me here, there's no one to go for Bellinis with anymore. And then we got to a point where a couple of weeks after you left, they said that if we weren't performing at a certain level by midday, you weren't allowed to take a lunch break. That's when it was like, I'm working 12 hours and like you're asking me where I'm going when I'm going to pee, like I'm going to pee. And so I got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And actually Costa, my partner at the time, is my boyfriend, and now my fiance, he encouraged me to apply to a program called Venture for Canada, which started on the East Coast. Now they're all across Canada, and very similar to Venture for America, they take semi-recent graduates and help place them with startups throughout the different cities so they can learn the startup ecosystem and hopefully give them the tools that they need to start their own businesses. And so at the time, I was applying to VFC thinking, I'm not even good enough to make this program. I don't know why I'm doing it. In hindsight, I look back and I'm like, amazing. I know I am. Thank you. Hold your applause. Like, I just mean like I'm a go-getter and I know that I can get shit done. But looking back, I was such a broken person that I didn't even think I was going to get into the program. And the job really took that emotional toll on me that I felt broken. And I remember saying, okay, I need to take a sick day. And I emailed in saying, listen, I'm really not feeling well. I'll get you a doctor's note, but I need to take the day off. And at the time, our manager was from the US and like did not understand Canadian labor laws. And he said, if you're not back in on Monday, you're going to be on a PIP, which is a performance improvement plan, which legally you can't do unless someone's missed quota or done something. But I took a Saturday off, which is like very, very wrong in our industry. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can go back. And actually, I was getting ready to go to work, and Costa was the one who told me, he's like, you're not going in today. He's like, you're just going to stay home for the week. They can't fire you. And just like, you've given them a lot, just take care of yourself. And then I started going through the VFC process. And at that point, when I was going so fast that I stopped, and I realized like everything was just hitting me, and I was emotionally like destroyed. Even to get up and go across the street to Aroma to go get a coffee in the morning was the hardest thing that I could possibly do. And so that's when I committed to doing a month of yoga. So there was a moksha down the street from me. It was like a 10-minute walk, and they had an intro month for like $60. And so I decided I was going to take the month off. At this point, I had gotten into VFC. And so I knew that, okay, in January, I can start looking at startups and find a job. But right now, I'm just going to take some time to be with myself. And so I committed that if I could just get up each morning and walk down the street and take a yoga class, then I accomplished something that day. And that's how broken I felt. Like to leave bed in the morning was such a struggle. And so I did that. And then I noticed each day I started to feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And then towards the end of my 30 days, I felt like a totally different human, and like yoga had just totally changed me. And at that point I was on a leave of absence from Lifetime, and they asked me if I wanted to come back. And I remember writing the email being like, no, you can like accept this as my resignation. I'm not coming back, because I felt like the person that I used to be, even better. Like my body felt great. I didn't have aches and pains from driving an hour to work every day. And my mind felt still. And I actually felt like I had control over my emotions again, which I didn't even realize it, but several months leading up to that breaking point, I didn't even have control over the person I was becoming or the way that I was feeling. That was really scary. So that was around the time that I left. So it was November of 2016.
I think so.
Yeah. And then you had started dabbling with the Shopify stores around then. And then it was in January, I started working with a tech startup called Fix. And Shane had reached out to me saying that he had started the Shopify store and asked if I wanted to start working with him and helping out with some customer service stuff. And then that's really when things like picked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually have some negative feelings about Venture for Canada.
I know.
Do you know why?
Because Shane also applied.
And I didn't get it. Those bastards. If only they could see what I'm doing now. I'm going to buy that company one day. No, but it sounds like Venture for Canada was huge for your life. And I've met a lot of, or some of the people that you've done that with and worked for, I think Fix and some other people associated with Venture for Canada.
I've met
seemed
a lot
like
of
some
great
awesome people.
Yeah, there are a lot of young people who just want to be entrepreneurs or just don't want to work for a corporation. Like I've worked with bigger companies, Lifetime, CIBC. And the one thing that always frustrated me was when you have big ideas and you can execute, but there's so much red tape limiting you from getting something done. That was my frustration is, I want to make a change. There's a word spelt wrong on the website. Let's just fix the word. But you have to go through all of these different levels. Right. And it's like, okay, like I can't do this forever. So that's where startups come in, where it allows people to actually get their hands dirty, get that real life experience, and make a difference in the organization.
So you went from working from a very corporate environment to now working with more startups.
Yeah.
What were some of the very noticeable differences that you found between these two corporate environments?
So the biggest thing is, I don't know if you remember this from being at Lifetime, but I've experienced this in most of the corporations that I've worked with, is always being on the sales front. You want to tell marketing to do something differently. It's like, stop using these words and stop marketing it like this, because I'm talking to people every day and that's not what's going to sell it. I'm selling it differently than you're marketing it. And it always felt like there was a disconnect between marketing and sales. And even in startups, you sometimes see that like product is against sales and sales is against marketing, and they don't mesh well. But I was really lucky to work with a very amazing startup right off the bat, which was Fix Software, based out of Toronto. Mark Castell was the founder and CEO at the time, and like a true visionary. He believed that a company revolves around its people, and in order for the people to be successful, they have to have all of the tools that they need. And so everyone has to communicate. So marketing and sales, our two VPs were best friends. Like they were each other's partners in crime. And so marketing and sales were always talking. So they were putting out content that our customers needed so that we had the sales tools that we needed to better sell. And that's the first thing that I noticed in a startup is if you see something that's not working, you have a voice, because it's less than 50 people. Sometimes it's even smaller. You're able to say, hey, this is broken. This is my recommendation on how to fix it. And they would actually take your recommendation and apply it. And so you actually felt like you were a part of building the company. When you're one of the first 20 hires absolutely, you're having a direct impact in what's happening. And I just loved that. That was the biggest thing, is they're smart people on all levels, but oftentimes in a corporation, you come in from the ground up and they don't treat you the same way that they treat someone who has tenure there and seniority. And it's great that that person has been with the company for 20 years, but there are things that they're missing. They're like, you're coming in, a new person's coming in with fresh ideas. They should be able to implement those ideas. Yeah.
Did you see anybody in the startup world who you thought, you should probably go work for a bigger company? You don't really fit the profile of what this startup needs.
All the time. A lot of millennials, and like, I understand that we're millennials, sorry. A lot of young people are graduating university and thinking that they don't want to go work for a corporation, so it's going to be fun to work at a startup because there are snacks and flexible hours and, and they're there, but then the thing with a startup is you really have to be a go-getter, because the answers aren't there for you. Your training is not going to be perfect. It's going to be very broken. So it's your job to enhance the training for the next person who gets hired, and then they will better it for the person after them, until eventually you're big enough that you have HR and you have processes in place. A lot of people, even though they say that they don't need structure, they do. And they don't know that they do. Right. It's not until that they work with a startup where literally everything is on fire all the time and your job is to react and put the fire out, that they realize that it's not for them. Yeah. Most people just go into it thinking this is going to be fun, this is going to be great, but they're used to years of having their hands held in school, being told, do these exact things and you'll get this grade. And then when it comes time to just figure shit out, people, a
like
lot
a
of people,
rubric. Remember rubrics?
Right?
Like rubrics are literally just a map on how to like be successful. That's what always blew my mind about school, was that they gave you a fucking rubric.
Exactly.
It's like, so wait a second. I just got to do everything in the far right column? Sure.
Right.
That's just a fucking checklist.
Yeah, exactly.
No, 100%. And I think that's why, I don't like, for me, like school, like there was some subjects in school where I just didn't pay attention and they were hard, but like overall school was so easy, because I'm like, there's the right column. That's the path.
Yeah.
That like, what else is there?
Exactly.
Like, it's interesting because it's like, if you've never challenged yourself in any other way and you just did school, like that's where I think like a lot of the time, like I know a lot of people that are hyper like academic and super smart, like that I went to high school with, and you kind of look at them and like, and they're not excelling in the workplace because it's just like, no. I don't know, like someone who can take direction. That's not someone that's weird. Anybody can take direction. You can train a dog to take direction, right? So it's like, I think that's the issue with school, is that it can breed these like very hyper analytical people and people that are super smart, but it's like, can they actually provide value to an organization where it's like, okay, yeah, we want to pay you like multiple six figures? Like probably not, right? Like if you have no creativity in you and you have no kind of like, I don't know, grit in terms of like figuring stuff out, it'd be really hard to make that transition.
It's true. And typically, don't they say that the best entrepreneurs are actually the people who performed the poorest in school?
I mean, that's whenever you hear at least the vocal entrepreneurs usually are, like I feel like maybe that's just, maybe those are just the ones that are talking, and then the other ones that were really good in school, they never talked in school and they're not going to talk when they're entrepreneurs, right? Like it could be like a little bit of a bias of like, the person who was talking out in class is probably going to talk out when he's successful.
It's true.
But I would say that, looking at like a lot of like my peers, if they were successful as entrepreneurs, like most of them weren't like the best students.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be a trait about an entrepreneur that would make them a good entrepreneur but a bad student?
A good entrepreneur but a bad student? I mean, like I think like if I just like look at myself, where it's like I've never kind of had a job like ever, the reason why I was like, I always got good marks and that wasn't an issue. Like I always kind of got by because I wasn't going to fail at something. Like that's kind of in me. But I think the biggest thing was I would sometimes, I would definitely hinder my ability to learn sometimes because I wanted to just do it my own way. Like I wouldn't always be accepting of learning. So that would be, I feel like if you say like a bad student is someone who can't be educated, like I think I would still execute in terms of I get grades and that would make me a good student, but I wasn't a good student in terms of like I'm consuming information and getting better as a person. And so like, a more traditional, or actually a more accurate way of defining a good student is like someone that's good at learning. I think sometimes if you're a really good entrepreneur, you might not be the best at learning.
Yeah, I also think I totally agree with that. And something that always jumped out at me is following steps. So there are those people that can have, what is it called? Like information paralysis or analysis paralysis. And so they need to understand everything before they can get started. And you almost spend too much time reading instructions. So I was always the person in school that was like, okay, I'm skimming over the instructions. Okay, I get it. I just want to get started. Like, let me just take the test. And I find for when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting a business, you have to do that. It's like, okay, it's going to break, like the website's going to crash, but like I'll figure it out and I'll fix it as I go. Yeah. But if I wait forever to understand how Shopify works, to understand Facebook ads, a year can go by and then guess what? Facebook ads change and then you have no fucking idea and you still didn't start your business. Yeah. So really good students, I think, can slow down and they'll read every step and they'll make sure that they have all of the facts before they get started. But as an entrepreneur, that's not going to help you because it's just going to delay actually getting started.
I think so often when we're trying to make a change to the website or trying to launch a new website, we're just like, and it's just, you're 3 days in and like, it seems like you haven't got anywhere. It's like, all right, let's just launch it. And then that will force us to make it good.
Exactly.
I feel like I've done that for every Shopify store I've launched. Like, let's just get it out and then we'll see where it breaks. Yeah. And then you end up getting it done in a day, whereas like, you could spend weeks, you know? Yeah, it's interesting. Like being able to just like let go of certain things, be like, fuck it. Like you can still make money if something's broken. Like, you know, like.
Yeah. I feel like you're right when you say that the most vocal entrepreneurs are, it biases us in a little bit because they're the ones who didn't perform well at school. And then they want to talk about how they've overcame that. And that wasn't an actual indicator of their potential. Yeah. And I feel like there's a bit of an inferiority complex that comes along with not excelling at something that you were expected to.
Yeah.
Right. And so they always want to, there's people that want to bring that up because it's like, see, I didn't do well, but look, it didn't matter. It didn't mean anything, you know? But there's also, some learning disabilities where, more of a conventional way that school was structured, it wouldn't have matched up like having, like Richard Branson having, what's that learning disability? Where you have trouble reading and following. Dyslexia. Yeah. Like there's certain things that type of learning structure didn't work for. Yeah. Whereas like, I think like going through university, there was a lot more, here's a problem, solve it, versus like, here's a rubric. This is just what you need to do. Yeah. Where I could see some people excelling well in school who that still would have worked in a business environment, right? Yeah. I don't necessarily think that if somebody performed well at school, it doesn't mean they're going to be a good entrepreneur.
There's probably a lot of really good med tech entrepreneurs that don't say shit.
Yeah,
and they're probably making way more money than us.
I did very well in school. I finished my kines degree early, and I took my last semester of my fourth year to get a second degree in psych and religious studies. So on that note, I was actually pretty good in school.
Well, the thing is, you do need to learn as an entrepreneur. So if school is learning, which it's not a lot of the times, but learning is definitely a good skill you need to have. You need to be able to learn quickly. So I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. But it seems like it's taking more people are realizing that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a good entrepreneur if you're shit at school.
Yeah.
Oh, there's definitely bad students that are shit at everything. They're just bad at everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, not to stay on the subject too long, but it is kind of interesting. It's like how do you find out that, okay, this person did well at school and they're probably going to do well at business? Maybe it's not that they've followed a structure given to them, but maybe they've created a structure around their own personal domain that worked for school. Yeah. They saw, hey, I need to get a 90 average. What's my personal structure going to look like to get that? It's like, okay, I have to spend this amount of time studying. I can't go out and party with my friends every night. And they build a system around themselves that works for that goal. Yeah. Like that might be a person who did well at school that also might do well somewhere else versus someone who's like, that's the system, I'm just going to replicate that. It worked, I'm going to replicate systems. That's what I'm going to do. I
think a lot of it has to do with who you're surrounded by as well, right? Like, I think if your parents were super into school or something, like you might then be like, okay, my goal is to be good at school. Yeah. But if you weren't, it's just like, then there's no one pushing that value for school. It's just, then you can divert your attention. I don't think either one is bad, but like you're saying, like if, you could have a kid that's like, okay, my goal is to get good in school, and like that could be a good entrepreneur because he sets goals and he achieves them, right? Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, whenever I have kids, I just don't want them to associate like what mark they get in school with like any sort of value other than like, unless you set that as a goal, then fuck it. But like if you set something else, as long as you're setting goals and achieving them, it doesn't really matter. Right? Like I think the biggest thing is that like this. Everyone goes to school so that everyone can look at everybody on this one graph, but it's like you can decide not to even be on that chart, right? And I think as long as you decide not to be on that chart, but then also decide, okay, you have to take your time and your energy and put it somewhere else, and then I think that's a fine transition.
Yeah, and I think as like now that we're the generation that's going to be, raising kids, things are going to be a lot different. Like my parents immigrated to Canada. My dad was an engineer, couldn't apply it when he came, and he had 3 kids, and then I was born a few years after they came, and he ended up working at a yogurt factory in Ontario when they first moved here, lived in Ontario for 6 months, and then moved to Nova Scotia, where he had to start his own business, and they opened a restaurant, because what else can you do when you're not educated and you can't go back to school? And so growing up, for me, every single day when I was leaving the house, my dad would say, be good today and be good in school. And that's always what they said to me. He used to say, don't get married, don't date until you're a doctor, like don't wait for anyone to take care of you. I know. And I was like, right. And then they didn't want anyone to ever have to take care of me. They wanted me to be self-sufficient. And for them, as immigrants who didn't have knowledge but saw knowledge as power, they wanted me to have all of the knowledge possible, which was really interesting, because they always pushed me towards being a doctor or being a lawyer. They thought I would be a really good lawyer. And so I pursued sciences in school, thinking that's what I'm going to do. And then things changed, but I also grew up with an entrepreneurial family. And so I didn't even realize that the thing that they didn't want me to do was just naturally embedded in me. I used to steal things from my brothers and then open up a convenience store in my bedroom and resell them their stuff back. No joke. And I remember my dad used to get so pissed that they had a pizza shop and a convenience store, and I used to take chocolate bars and stuff and set up a lemonade stand and sell their stuff and then just like pocket the money myself.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always pursued sales jobs, because I always wanted to know that what I was going to get was a direct reflection of what I was putting in. Where school, it wasn't always like that. So, you could study all day long for a test and like feel like you really knew the shit. And then all of a sudden the prof throws a question in there that was only in the advanced reading that you didn't have to do. And then you're like, well, fuck me. Like, I guess it's not good enough.
Okay. So I think now I understand why our supplier has such a hard time getting good margins on his products that we're buying from. Because you started your career with zero cost of goods. And you've had to gone up from there. And poor Mark is making yoga pants as fast as he can for a price he's not completely satisfied with.
He's a little scared of me, actually.
The one thing about that story that kind of just like put a light on in my head is that I feel like often I hear people say like a saying that someone would say to them often when they were a kid, and it stuck with them to like now. Yeah. And so I would interesting to hear. So mine was from a family friend. Anyway, he only ever said it to me once, but I remember it to this day. Mm-hmm. And all he said was, all life is decisions. Make good ones. And it was so open ended that was just like, and it's been able to like transform in my life. There's like, okay, like I can make any decision. Like life is just decision. That's all it is. So it's just like, well, what is the good decision? Yeah. And it's just like, and there always is a good, right decision. Whether someone else sees it as right, but there's a good decision for you at that time. And like, I think it's interesting here because I think so many people have that like one saying that like it guides their whole life, and it's just like, well, fuck, if I have kids, I gotta make sure I'm saying the right shit, because it could be that one that fucks them.
Thinking about it's like, what is the one thing I'm gonna say to them?
Okay, speaking of things that can fuck you, so I had a friend in university who was just the biggest player I've ever met in my entire life. Yeah. He came into university and told me that he had sex with over 500 women. Wow. And I was like, this is one of those guys that talks a lot of shit, but after spending 4 years with him, I'm like, he probably lowballed himself. It was insane, but that was all he did. We had the exam time, and he'd go to the library, and he didn't bring any books with him. He would just go there to talk to girls.
Oh my God.
And that was his full-time job, essentially. And the reason that he did that was because his dad was passing away, and on his deathbed told him that his biggest regret was getting married too young and not having been with enough women.
Holy
shit.
God.
Yeah, take that in. So he was just obsessive with just as many women as possible. That was his goal, his only goal. Didn't care about school, didn't care about his buddies, nothing. He was like, I'm just going to sleep with women. That's what I'm going to do.
Fuck.
What his dad probably meant was like sleep with 10.
Not 500 before university. Yeah,
Holy
so
shit.
one sentence can definitely fuck somebody up in the wrong way.
It's true.
Interesting. Yeah. So that same thing with like getting a grade in a school. You get this early identifier of who you are, and you associate it with your identity. Like, I'm a C student because I had a pop quiz in grade 3 and I didn't know how to spell bumblebee. Yeah. And all of a sudden now I just associate myself or identify myself as not being a smart person.
Yeah. It's true. And then people also treat you differently throughout life. Like, it's the same thing as, is socioeconomic status. People are often treated or mistreated based on where they fall. And I always noticed that with teachers, where teachers were nicer to some students if they had better grades, and then not as nice to the ones who struggled, where in hindsight, maybe learning environment or the type of way that they were being taught just wasn't conducive to their style of learning.
100%.
But and that's something that I do love now, is that people are more outspoken, and a lot of tech entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley have opened their own schools for their own children. So they decide how their kids learn and what they're learning. And like, I respect that so much, because we're allowing an entire generation to be brought up in a way that everyone can be good at something. It's just finding what is the thing that's going to make them tick, and how can we help them be perfect at it. Maybe if someone told us, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if my dad told me like, be an entrepreneur, like fucking go out and kill it, I probably would have done something a lot sooner. But I was trying to follow this track my whole life, being like, I got to be a doctor, I got to be a lawyer, like I got to do something that's like good. And like, that is a career that will define me as like a good person in society. Like, what is that? So it's interesting to see like the constraints that are placed on us as kids, and like how that molds the person that you become and like what you end up doing.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of variables in that.
Yeah.
So I think that your dad was right to push you into law, because we ended up needing that.
Yeah, we did. You know what? I still think I could be a great lawyer, maybe one day, just for fun.
Let's hope not. I don't want you to need to have to be a good lawyer.
Again.
Okay, so that was one of the reasons that we wanted to do this podcast, was because you and I have a very unique, I think, and interesting story, being in our first year of business. Yeah. And it was an experience that thrust us into this world of business and law that, we didn't anticipate. And I think we came out of it much stronger people than we did going in.
Absolutely.
But we went into it very naive and scared.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody listening to this, whether they're in business or e-commerce or anything, it's going to provide a lot of value to them. So I want to tell this story, and I think Zach will be a good person to pull some good stuff out of us while we go through this and talk about this situation. So you and I had been running Namastetics for something like 8 months or something like that?
So it was coming in right before our first Black Friday. So it was end of October, beginning of November.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, to put it into perspective, Namastetics had been doing fairly well for this 8 months.
Yeah.
And a lot of the products that we'd been selling, we started off on a drop shipping model. So we would find designs that suppliers had already made, or that somebody else had designed, and then we'd get proof of concept for a niche by selling other people's designs. That's how. But we didn't know exactly where these were coming from.
So we were very similar to a boutique that was just a middleman selling other people's creations and other people's products. So we would buy directly from a manufacturer and sell those to the consumer.
Exactly. So that'd be a great way of putting it. So starting off right in the beginning, it wasn't a lot of, we went with a lot of templates of designs that we were given. Yeah. And then we'd make small adjustments to them, and then change up the coloring, and then like a bit of the sizing and everything. But we'd kind of start from some base that was given to us.
And a lot of it was, we didn't have a lot of capital to invest at the beginning, and we didn't know what we wanted to invest in if we didn't have a proof of concept, like you said. So it was a great way to get started, is to understand what are people looking for by selling designs that already existed, and then slowly transitioned into being our own brand and designing the clothing ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had found, one particular product that was working extremely well. That was a fairly unique product that had given us the capability to launch this business quickly. Yeah. And we went into November, December, into the fourth quarter of the year, selling mainly this product.
Yeah. And at that point, we had been manufacturing it ourselves, because during the year, it was one of our best selling items. It was so popular. And it was unique in the sense that you couldn't find it a lot, but it was a style that was huge in the 70s and 80s. It was a really big style that, you would see in music videos, workout videos. It was kind of everywhere, and it dominated the fitness market for decades. And so the thing is, though, it was hard to find the actual product. So
it slipped away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The fad kind of ended. And then I think we were a big component in bringing that trend back onto the market. And so at that point, we were actually started investing our own money to create our own custom colors and to manufacture it the way that we wanted.
Yeah. So we had invested a lot into this product in terms of the design and time and money in stocking it. Yeah. And then we went into November, December, and we had a massive massive Q4 that changed, everything for us, where this product just absolutely popped off. And we were so happy with all this. In the midst of this somewhere, I can't remember exactly when we first heard from this other company, but
it was around the end of October.
Around the end of October, we received a cease and desist letter from another brand.
Before Black Friday hit.
Before Black Friday
Yeah. A cease and desist letter before Black Friday from a huge competitor in our space. Basically saying that they had, design patent protection on the product that we've been selling, this specific product. So I've never received a cease and desist before. I didn't know what it was at the time. But I mean, it was a little bit scary. I think we didn't quite understand what it meant.
No.
So we frantically tried to find some legal help on it to get a good diagnosis of what we should do. So we interviewed a bunch of lawyers and then eventually kind of landed on somebody.
Well, what's interesting, actually, what first happened is they emailed us. They emailed our info ad account, and it actually went to spam. So it was when we were cleaning out the inbox that we found it. We're like, what the fuck is this? And then we found out that Shane would be served. And so we were like, I remember calling me don't answer your front door. Shows up until we figure out what the hell this means.
Yeah, because we had kind of figured out that you have a timeline once. A cease and desist is kind of like a courtesy letter from another company. Hey, take this down. We won't pursue anything further. But then if they decide to pursue litigation or to sue you, then once you get served, then there's kind of a time clock on.
Things start happening.
Yeah, before things start happening. So we had received the cease and desist letter after talking to a few lawyers. We're like, hey, we still really have to diagnose this issue before we take any drastic action, like taking the product down or reaching back out to them. I think that's a big mistake a lot of people make.
Yeah, never message back.
Yeah. And have your lawyer message back. That's the other thing is we're lucky that we didn't, because imagine what stupid thing we could have said that would have just ruined everything.
Right. Yeah. So the point of all this is we understood that we were on their radar about it. We didn't fully understand the problem, but we knew this was a product that was driving most of our business. So we went into Q4 still pushing it. Yeah. And we did, an insane amount of sales for us at the time. So we were stoked about that. And I remember on Black Friday, after, having an awesome day, partying afterwards and just working for 12, 14-hour days. I did a full all-nighter that night, setting up our ads and manual bidding throughout the night. And then I got home to my parents' place where I was living at the time, and then there was another cease and desist on the counter.
On the day after Black Friday.
That night of Black Friday when I got back. So I'm looking at all these huge sales and I'm like, yes, it's happening. And then there was a cease and desist letter on my desk that my parents had given me, just a big fucking stack of papers. And I just remember looking at it do I want to open this right now? I did, and I started reading through it, and they're, wanting damages. So they were wanting us to pay, everything that we had made from this product.
Plus all of the money that they had potentially lost from customers buying it from us instead of them. And the biggest thing between us and that company is we are more, we try and be more inclusive with our pricing. So we have a more affordable model. Their pricing is triple of what we would retail our leggings store. So we were like, oh my God, we have to pay them
so
3 times the amount.
It started getting scary at that point.
So I feel like I want to backtrack a little bit, because I think there's a lot in the story we don't want to let's slip through the cracks. So let's just go back to the good shit for a second. Your first Black Friday. This is you guys are less than a year into business, right?
Yeah. Coming up to a year.
I want to hear kind of more about what that feeling's like when you're saying it's it feels like it starts working. I know it kind of feels like you're nothing can touch you, and you're just fuck it, and you think it's never gonna end, and all this kind of stuff all this good stuff's happening, right? But maybe get into some details on that. Was there anything transformative that when it was in the moment that you hold on to now, or things that you realized about yourself? I feel like anytime there's massive shifts in someone's state, right? You get to learn a little bit about yourself. In that first little bit, did it put you into a lot of imposter syndrome, or did it go the other way where you felt no one could ever touch you?
Why don't you start with that, Misha?
Yeah, you know what? A little bit of both. The very first thing that you think of was, holy shit, we did it. We did this. And it's that feeling of I'm untouchable. But then especially I don't know about you, Shane, but for me, and I think this is common with most females, is that imposter syndrome starts to settle in pretty quickly. And then you're whoa, did I actually do this? I don't know. And then you kind of start making excuses for yourself and you're like, oh, well, everyone had a really good Black Friday. So like maybe this was just lucky or, I don't know. And you kind of start doubting yourself, but it's one of those things that the minute that you start seeing the numbers coming in throughout the day and you're like, wow, this is great. And then you see your ending number that day on, let's say, Black Friday alone, compared to the rest of the year, you look at it and you're like, wow, we did something pretty amazing. We took a chance on something. We made a call to stock this product and we put everything that we had behind it. And we were right to do that. We made a good decision. And it kind of makes you feel like I'm actually good at this. I can do this. I can run a business. And like, I don't need to be a fashion designer and I don't need to have a degree in any of this to be able to create something that is in need and in demand. So you have that great feeling, but then for me, it kind of started to tip down. And then I think maybe for Shane that night, it really may have crashed.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like there's definitely a big empowering aspect to it. And I think people, they should embrace that because it makes you trust yourself more. It's like you build up reference points of success, and then that builds into your character. Where when you have to make a judgment call, like you were saying, how decisions are so important, you trust yourself to make a decision, knowing, hey, I've executed well. Yeah, I can do this. It is something well. I think that's quite powerful for people, having that self-confidence, even if it's not something where it's like, hey, everybody did well on Black Friday. I think that does feed into your success into the long term, embracing it. I think what was interesting for me is reaching, kind of taking a few steps up the rungs in the ladder. The first thing I wanted to do is tell everybody about it. But especially as an early entrepreneur, you're usually not surrounded with people that have amounted that success, right? So when you're telling, you're not going to get the reaction you think you're going to get from a lot of people. So there was an interesting thing where I was, wanted to tell everybody, but found myself holding back. I was like, what, it's probably not a good idea. And then you kind of find out like who are the people that are going to be excited about it with you, right?
It's interesting when you go to someone with the good news and they're as excited, whatever. Where I feel like that's when you really, really understand like who kind of, because you can always there's always a feeling when you give someone good news. It's like, okay, are you actually happy for me, or you just pretending to be happy because you like want me to like take you out or something? It's interesting, but like I think, and it's interesting because people was like, oh, you always find who your friends are when like stuff's not good, but it's like, no, everyone's usually there when stuff's not good. But it's like, who's actually genuinely there and happy for you
when things
are really good, where they're like, they don't want anything from you other than for you to just bask in your like, the best thing.
It's so true. I find people tend to make excuses on why you're successful versus why they're not, right? And it's like, oh, well, you had this, or you had that, and it's like, sure, you can say that, but it almost takes away from your happiness, and you do quickly realize who's there for you. Actually, that's part of the reason that I ended up leaving Fix, was for a startup that wanted to support young entrepreneurs. I felt like I had to go into work every day in secret, and I couldn't tell anyone what I was working on that night. Or I remember coming in after Black Friday and having like a massive day and just being like, because I took a vacation day from work that day and being so happy. And one of the guys actually asked me, he's like, so how's your Black Friday? I was like, and I felt like I had to downplay it. I was like, oh, it was fine, because I knew that my VP was sitting there probably cringing that it's like, you don't think about anything except for these sales right here. And so it was just that realization of like, this isn't the environment that I can be in long term.
Right. So you guys are like over the moon, happy. You got tons of cash in the bank. Got those Shopify things just pumping. And you're like, sweet. And then Shane comes home after Black Friday. I hate reading anything like legal like that. So like, even when I have this weird thing where like, even when I get notices from this like the revenue agent CRA like on my email, I'll let it sit there for like 2 weeks. And like, they're usually just updates being like blah 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 blah. Like I've never had any issues with the CRA, but anytime I see like any legal thing, like my heart rate just fucking goes. Cause like, it's also one of those things where it's like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, this is not what I want to be doing with my time. Like, and the thing, and you can't choose not to. And that's what's always been like scary for me. It was just like, fuck, if I ever had like a big legal thing, like I'd probably just leave. Like,
see, that's where we're very different and we complement each other. Where Shane will take a picture of a letter and I'm like, open it right now and tell me what it says. And he's like, maybe in a week.
I push that shit because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this right now.
There's so many easy ways to get out of it. It's like, it's late. I'm not going to be able to solve this problem tonight. And then the next day, it's like, well, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so I'm not in a good state to solve this problem. So I think definitely a big takeaway from that was you need to open those letters and deal with it fucking ASAP. And here's the other thing, like with successes and with big adversity like that, you do definitely come into contact with your true character. And part of it has to do with the spontaneity of it. You're not expecting a big success. You're not expecting a big failure. whatever person you assume, you kind of realize like, I'm that person. I
Yeah.
need to be that person more often.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, we did well with the letter because we took action on it right away.
We did.
Although we did procrastinate on opening it and like fully understanding it. Once we had like, this is the issue, it was like, okay, we need to find a lawyer. We flew down to California because we're like, we can't have this lawyer be in Canada for reasons, and we dealt with the issue.
Yeah.
So there was good things with it.
We
so
right away started interviewing people, and like we started calling people so VFC put me in contact with Deloitte, which is the firm that they use and they partner with. And so we just started talking to a few different lawyers to figure out, okay, what is it that we need? And the minute that we found someone, we ended up feeling like they understand us. They understand patent law. They're going to be able to help us. We got on a plane and we flew down there to go meet and just start taking care of things right away.
Right. And here's the thing, finding a good lawyer can be a blessing in these situations because they're used to people just going through these. Yeah. They know how stressed people are going to be. They're very good at being calm through these situations. So it like definitely put us at ease, and he was calm about it. He's like, this is what we're going to do. So not only, so this is building upon like a beast right now. This is still snowballing. There's still other factors that went into this. So we're all elated. We get home. There's a letter. Realize there's an issue because we just sold so much of this product, and now this money might not be ours. Yeah. So I think that was kind of in our heads.
Meanwhile,
that
we
also
sucked. Had another production order in the works. So we had another order that we had committed to with the supplier before
this product.
Yeah, before we even got this letter. Like it was before the letter arrived, we had already put in a PO, we had already placed a deposit. And so it's like, okay, not only could this money not be ours, but now we're on the line for more production
of this product.
Yeah.
Right.
And we also found out that we oversold a lot of the product on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, because we were just selling. We didn't want to stop selling. Yeah. So we oversold a lot of what we had. And it became an issue because we had expected a shipment kind of that weekend that was getting to the facility, which ended up being a lot less of a quantity than we had expected. Yeah. So we found out we had oversold by a lot. Yeah. And ended up being a supplier issue. They weren't communicating with us that one of their machines or something was down, so they couldn't give us the order that we had placed. They
didn't give us the full order, and they told us that the rest would be on its way, but they didn't communicate that until we received the order, and we found out that we were supposed to get 1,000, but we really only got 20. What happened? And that's when they told us, oh, the machine broke and this. And it's like, why didn't you tell us that a month ago? Right. Because here we are selling these products thinking we're going to be able to fulfill them next week because we have the order arriving this week, and then basically nothing.
So we have thousands of customers expecting a product that hasn't shipped, and we have no immediate plans
probably
of
for
getting
Christmas
them.
because it's Black Friday.
Exactly.
So I took an emergency flight over to China to meet with the owner of this factory and talk about it and all this stuff. And during this issue, we had one of our customer service reps have a mental breakdown. Yeah. Because she's answering all these emails and all these people are yelling at her, so she quits.
Were you doing customer service in Canada still at that point?
Yeah. So it was someone actually in Canada who was doing our CS, and it was just very overwhelming. She was going through a tough time anyway. And then all of this was happening where customers were like, where's my product? Where's my product? And we didn't have an answer for her. And so she didn't have an answer, and she is a perfectionist, really wants to make sure that, and she did an amazing job all year. And so for her, it was very frustrating that she was working with us and we weren't able to give her the tools she needed to do a good job. So Shane hopped on a plane, she quit. I'm answering emails, but also
and how many were we getting? Wasn't it like an email every 30 seconds or something?
Yeah, it was like we were getting hundreds a day.
I think it was every 30 seconds we were getting an email.
And then Shane was in China FaceTiming me, and him and I are talking, and then I'm sending them projections of what we're losing, because then at that point we just want to make it right by the customer. We're in a business, so we are not only refunding them for their order, we're offering them a free gift, and we're still telling them that they're going to get the product that they ordered with, because we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to hurt all of these potential customers that could be with us for a long term, just because we were let down by our supply chain. And so we were trying to do everything to go above and beyond. We were offering expedited shipping, all of this. We ended up basically all of the money that we made on Black Friday, we ended up losing because we had to pay for the lawyer retainer, and then comping shipping for people, which we still have to pay for with our warehouse, giving free products, comping orders, doing all of that just to make it right by those people.
Right.
And so you're, are we saying who you're getting sued by at this point?
Yeah, we can say it.
Yeah. Yeah. So who are you getting sued by?
Color Image Apparel.
Color Image Apparel, which is an umbrella company for Aloe Yoga.
Right.
Yeah. So
massive company.
Massive.
So we've lost. So we've
Yeah.
made all these sales. Then our supplier kind of screws us over. And
Yeah.
we screwed ourselves over taking ownership of not communicating enough with them.
Yep.
And then can't get everybody these products that they just bought, refunding everybody, and Aloe Yoga still wants all the money that
back.
we made,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we didn't actually make.
Yeah.
Back from this.
Right.
That's the fucking issue that we're dealing with.
Right.
Just so much stuff
Yeah.
hitting the fan.
And it's like,
Are you incorporated at this point? Or
we
you
were incorporated?
Okay, thank
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. But still,
But
right?
still,
Like,
it still
we
sucks,
just-
but
we
it's like
just
it could have
spent
been
a year building
yeah.
this brand and building this business, and it's like all of this could be over. And that is something that we said. We're like, you know what? Worst case scenario, we just open a new business tomorrow because we've been through it. But at the same time, you invest all of this time and effort into it that you don't want to do that.
Also, a corporation doesn't fully protect you. Like, you're still personally liable for the corporation at this point. You're not just, you can't just like, oh, see you later.
Right.
They're still coming after you. And we took a loan from my parents to buy more inventory.
Yeah.
So we were also in debt.
Right.
To my parents.
And you're getting
like, it wasn't
sued.
a bank. It was my
Yeah.
parents that now know we're get fucked over and now have a officer of the law, whoever the guy is that serves me. I'll never forget that.
You got served.
I got served.
So what ended up happening, so we'll backtrack a little bit before we get to that point. So what ended up happening is our lawyer responded to them, telling them, you know what, we don't think that this will stand up in court, because we actually ended up becoming lawyers ourselves and doing a lot of research. We had to hire an investigator to work with the lawyer. And what we found were the grounds that we could argue the suit on was prior art and obviousness, which are two things in law. So the prior art means that this item or this image existed before they even had a patent on it, before their patent was issued. And so something that actually happened in the US a long time ago that people don't realize is, like, in the early 2000s, people were just applying for patents and they were giving them to everyone. What ended up happening is a lot of people were getting patents to basic algorithms and then suing bigger companies like Facebook and Google, saying that you're infringing on my patent, so pay me all this money. And so then what happened was a lot of people were applying to have patents rejected or like reevaluated, and then they were getting canceled because they found that the patent should have never been issued in the first place. So we approached it with the sense of there's enough prior art and obviousness that if anyone looked at this design, they would be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we argued it that there was that level and that they should never have received the patent in the first place. They didn't like our response, so they took it to the next level and actually filed suit.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. Is it wasn't like we looked at what their patent was that they had and didn't feel that it was legitimate. We had felt like what we said before of this is a style that was around quite a lot in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And they've basically taken that style, did some small tweaks to it, and then patented it so nobody else could do it.
Exactly.
And I always say, like, the analogy is kind of like a brim on a hat or a hood on a hoodie.
Yeah.
Like, to get a patent on that is just ridiculous.
Right.
And we were looking at it the same way, where this really isn't fair. This isn't fair competition to be able to patent something like that.
What it was two things that go together, and then we just sewed them together. So it's a style. So imagine if you wore a shirt with a pair of pants, but then you just decide I'm going to sew the shirt onto the pants and make a bodysuit.
I think it's more like those sweaters that when you buy them they'll have like a fake shirt underneath.
Yeah.
It's more like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, yes, I wear a t-shirt under my sweater. And now I'm just going to sew it together so that and then it was that we were saying there's a level of obviousness here that anyone could look at it and be like, why don't I just sew the two pieces together?
Right.
And so that was our argument. And then they actually ended up coming back and not liking our response. So that's when they filed suit. So that's the day that Shane got served.
Right. And so this is a company too that it just has tons of legal resources, tons of cash to burn. And realistically, they probably just want to squash you more than they want to.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they knew that our argument was valid, because our lawyer thought it was valid. We firmly believed it was valid. And the minute that we got the cease and desist, we thought it was a joke. We looked at it and we were like, how could you have gotten a patent for this?
Yeah.
Like Jane Fonda, this was her outfit of choice in her workout videos in the 80s. How is it that you're going to say that this was an original idea? And that's what a patent is. When you're receiving a patent, that's saying that you created an original idea, that this did not exist before you.
Also, there was other companies we found selling that exact same product before they did.
Literally
that was
across the street
prior
from
art.
the Aloe store in Santa Monica. When we were there meeting our lawyer, we were doing some shopping in Santa Monica, and we looked at one of the stores, the storefront, and they had this particular legging in the window. And we looked across the street and we were like, and they're suing us in Canada?
Yeah. And not even like currently, like there was people a long time ago that we found that were selling it. So
and so you got Sarah. Let's go back to you. So how was, where were you? How was that?
That was great. It was an awesome experience. I was home, and what's the movie with Seth Rogen where he serves people and he dresses up in the costumes and everything?
I don't know.
You don't know? Is it Pineapple Express? His job was to serve people, so he'd dress up like a doctor and then he'd serve a doctor and like disguise himself because you have to accept it for it to be valid. Right.
You can't just be like, fuck off.
No, like you have to actually accept the serve to be served.
Okay.
So people would. So there's like people trying to
away.
get around.
You need to like. You need, what is an acceptance? Like you hold it, like, and thank you.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I signed something. I might have.
Yeah,
signed something.
They had to like. Sometimes they take a photo showing that you've actually received it, or you have to sign for it, and so
because that's when the time clock ticks. Of like now you have a court date once you get it served.
Yeah.
So you have a court date. You have to appear in court.
Good to know.
Before that, yeah. So this guy shows up on my doorstep, and I'm looking out the window, and I see a guy pull up, and it says like Ontario on his car, and he pulls up, and I'm like, yeah, that guy looks a little suspicious. I'm not gonna answer this door.
Yeah.
and then he goes away, and then like the next day he comes back, and I wasn't home alone. My mom was there, so she goes and answers the door, and I'm like, okay, we're done.
And I remember Shane called me. So I was actually at my day job. I stepped out and he was like, the guy's at the door. Do I take the door? And then all of a sudden your mom is in the background being like, Shane.
Oh,
yeah. So
like, okay, it's
I
on.
mean, if I was by myself, I think I would have been a little more like shitting my pants. But my mom was right there, and I owed her a lot of money from this company. She had invested in this company.
Right.
So I had to assume this stature of like, I've got this handled. I know this was coming. We've got this handled, which we did. Yeah. Even though I was shitting my pants, I didn't show it. I think I convinced myself that I could handle this situation. So I mean, it was scary, obviously, but I took it. I'm like, I got this. Don't worry, Mom. Like I understand what's going on here. She's like, should I be worried? I'm like, no, I've got it. Yeah. And it kind of convinced myself of it at the same time. Yeah. So
tell me a little bit about that, because I know that we've talked about it a bit too. I don't know if you told Zach about it, but that really put a strain on your relationship with you and your parents too, right? Because they were constantly asking you, how's it going? And you didn't want to tell them like, oh, fuck us. Like, so you're just like, it's okay. We have it handled. But didn't it make you pull back a little bit from them? Because
maybe a little bit. I wouldn't say it put a strain on our relationship. I mean, my parents have like an awesome relationship. We've never had a strain on it, but I didn't like the fact that I was putting them at risk. So I projected that out to them. You know, when they'd ask me how things were going, I'd get all frustrated. Yeah. And
I can see that, like, even for like little things, my parents asked me like, let's just say I had like a bad day in business. My parents like, how's everything? And I'm just like, you just don't want to. You're just like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, you know, like I can imagine getting sued is like 10 times that. Like I don't know.
Especially when we owe them money that we can't pay.
Exactly.
You know? And so I felt so bad, and I was just so guilty that I owed them so much money, and I was putting them at risk. Yeah. It was just like such an awful, awful feeling, like to the point where it was all I was thinking about. I had no creativity. Literally all I was thinking about was how I owed my parents all this money. I was getting sued by $1 billion company, and I had never done this before. And it was a bad situation. I couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything, couldn't work effectively. It helped because I was constantly looking into things. They constantly like, what is design patent? What is all the constituents of it? You know, where does it not make sense? Is the one that they got? Is it actually valid? Is it not? What actions should be taking? So I got super involved in the process.
That's where we basically became lawyers, and like that's where knowledge is power. So we were advising our lawyer at the time, being like, so we found this and we found this, and he's like, great, send it all over. And basically at that point, we had a court date set, and we were like, okay, we are going to do one more kind of Hail Mary. We're going to lay everything out for them, and then either they're going to drop the suit or we have to be prepared to go to litigation. And then that was the time where both of us were just researching everything. We had a document together of like images and video references where we could find all of this prior art, anything that fell into prior art or obviousness. And I think we ended up having 15 counts of prior art, something like that, of just examples of other companies selling this design before they had even received their patent in, I think, 2013 or 2014. And so sent all of that over, and then we just held our breath for about a month until we heard back from them.
Yeah, I think a big piece of advice I'd give anybody going through a similar situation, or just anything that feels overwhelming. I was listening to like an old Conor McGregor motivational video, and he was talking about, the fact that he was going into the fight game and nobody supported him, and everybody was doubting him, and he wasn't doing well at the time, and he just said he's got to work through it. Just work through it. That's not really.
So
a
you were just
common
on.
area,
You're just in the morning or at night.
Yeah,
Headphones
just
on, taking
jam
a
into
shit.
some
Just
Conor
work through it.
McGregor.
Just work through it.
And so that, I think that was a good piece of advice I took.
Yeah.
You just got to work through it. Just
Yeah.
obsess over the problem.
Yeah.
Work through it. Get as much information as you can, because that will put your mind at ease.
Yep.
Where you know you're doing everything possible to fix the situation.
Exactly.
That was what I think got us through it.
Yeah.
It's just like, work through it. You're overwhelmed.
Yep.
There's so much shit hitting the fan. Work through it.
Yep.
Just keep grinding through it. You'll
Yep.
get through it eventually.
And I think we both had the mentality of like, fuck this, we are not going down.
Right.
Like, we are going to fight. And even if it depletes all of the limited resources that we had at the time, we were like, we're going to do it because we know that we're right. And we just saw it as this really big company that should never have had that patent to begin with. Let's be real. And they were just trying to destroy all of the little competition. It was almost offensive. It's like, you guys are already so big. There's enough that, you know, there's enough for all of us to be successful. It's like our success does not diminish the amazing business that you've created.
Right.
So let us be successful in our way. And it was almost offensive that they were just looking to squash small businesses. And like, that's what they thought of startups and people just trying to make a name for themselves, is that they thought that they could just throw their money at it and squash them. So I don't think that they were expecting us to have as much fire as we did, because once we received it, we were like, you know what, we're up to the challenge. Let's do it. Like, bring it on. And we actually ended up getting them to drop the suit.
Right.
Because of all of the investigative work that we had done, all of the knowledge that we had. We just went in very confidently. We sent everything to our lawyer. He responded, and it was probably about a month later that we heard back. Shane actually got an email, and he called me, and I was at work, and he's like, did you check your email yet? And I was like, no, what's up? Like, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to tell you. And I still remember I was standing in the kitchen of our old office building, and I was looking outside at the trees, and I was like, this is either it. We either have lost everything, and they said that they're going to litigation, and we're literally going to have to take out another loan, which we had just finished paying his parents back for the first loan. We're like, we're going to have to take out another loan to pay for this, or we're just going to have to call it a day. What are we going to do? Like, it was nice while it lasted. And he goes, they dropped the suit. And I remember like falling to my knees being like, oh my God, no way. And it's like, we live another day. And that's all we kept saying is, we live another day. We live another day. It's another day. And at that point, then you're so high, you just crash and you're like, I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
This big problem that consumes all of you is over. So what did you guys do after?
I cried on my bed for a while.
I actually like took the fetal position in my office, and I was just like, everyone was like, are you okay? And I was like, I just need 5 minutes. And I was like, I don't even know what to do. Like, we ended up going out for dinner and drinks that night, and like we like had our little celebration. It was like a very minimal dinner because we did still owe people money. So it wasn't like we weren't popping bottles by any means.
There was just so much on the line.
Yeah.
It was just, and I'll never forget reading that email and just bursting out into tears and just like yelling hysterically at the same time. Like, never been so elated.
And it
before.
was probably March where it all got resolved. And so this had been going on. Think about it. We got this letter, and it all started in like October. All of those sleepless nights, like, that's just all that's on your mind. All of these sales, you're doing your income tax in the new year, and you're just like, oh, this could be like negative. I'm like, we don't know. And you're doing all those things. And so it didn't clear up until March. And it was just,
Looking back at it, I'm definitely 100% grateful for it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think the more adversity you can successfully come through, the earlier in your life, the better. Because now I have friends that get cease and desist letters who are panicking. I have, we have other big problems that we face in our business, but it's now with a thicker skin.
Exactly.
Like, the problems can be just as big and hopefully bigger.
Yeah.
Like, we want to overcome bigger problems, but now we're going into it with a thicker skin that we built.
And it puts everything into perspective as well. So like, you look at things and you can have the perspective of like, oh, these bad things happen to me and it's so hard, but you can also look at it as like, this is just going to make me better. It's another challenge that I get to overcome that someone else doesn't get to go through. Like, we're really lucky because now whatever comes up, it's small potatoes compared to what we've already been through.
Right.
And so I see that as, really a blessing that we get to experience that, because that's only going to make us a bigger force to be reckoned with whatever else we end up going, we end up doing in our careers.
Right. So I know Shane's told me this story once before, and he said, so you said that you had the Conor McGregor in your ear for months, but then also you said meditation was like a huge thing that got you through it. Do you want to like dive into that? I feel like that'd be valuable.
So there's a good book called The Mind Illuminated, and it's written by a neuroscientist who spent time learning and being involved and integrated with Eastern culture. So there's a lot of woo-woo that goes along with meditation that people don't really understand. So he kind of merged those two worlds of the scientific approach and then some of like the ancient archaic wisdom around it and distilled it down to like a textbook guide on how to meditate. So at the time I was reading through that, and I think one of the biggest parts was that it was empowering because I found a way to get my mind still in a time where I was just so out of control. Like it showed that no matter how bad things get, like I still have control over my state no matter what's going on, because I could still sit for 20 minutes and have nothing on my mind other than the breathing exercise I was focused on. So it was a big empowering thing where it's like you control your state. You're never at the whim of somebody else or circumstances happening. And I was able to get myself calm enough to be able to deal with the situation level-headedly. So I'd say that was a big part. Meditation, it's one of those things where I don't practice it as often as I did then. It was kind of born out of necessity, but it's whether or not I still use meditation, it was empowering to know that you control your state, you know, and it doesn't matter what else is going on. So that was a big one.
Did you have anything through all of it that was like...
it was yoga, which started around the time that the company had started. That's how I felt like I had control over my emotions again, was just practicing, having a regular yoga practice, and same thing, really focusing on where I was putting my breath in my body and knowing that I controlled my reaction to everything. And so our first year in business, I actually got a certificate from the yoga studio that I had practiced over 200 times year. Yeah, so it was crazy. Like some days I was going in the morning and in the evening because I felt like that's what I needed to give myself the power and strength to get through. So I was doing a regular yoga practice, which I don't do as much as I should now. But at the time, that's what carried me through. Very similar, just focusing on my breath and where I was putting my thoughts and what I was allowing to influence my body and the way I reacted to it. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think it would be interesting to go over some of the business lessons that we took away.
Yeah.
Not just personal. Even good for us to review, because there was a ton and our business changed drastically because of that. We took some different actions. I mean, one of them was, we had designs that, we didn't fully own. And we wanted to make sure that we were always, designing our own stuff and that we had really good things we could be confident in that nobody else was going to try to take a piece of. So we hired a designer and we built a good design team and started pumping out a lot of really cool designs and good stuff. So I think that was a big takeaway. Another one was don't have a single point of failure with your products, because this was all centered around one product.
Is something, it's really hard to grasp too, because when you're in it and you have one product that's really popping off, you feel like, well, why would I invest resources in something else? And it's the same thing. Don't put all of your eggs in one basket. And so when the time came, we felt like, okay, well, now the business is going to crash because we don't have that one big seller. But you know what? We ended up finding something else, and we found other things that people love. And for me, the biggest takeaway is you should always be designing new things. Things are going to work and they're going to flop. Some things are not going to work and they're going to flop, and other things are going to take off and they're going to be your new number one. But you shouldn't just have a number one. You should have top 5, top 10, the things that are always going to be carrying you through. Otherwise, you won't be successful. And when something like this does happen, because eventually something will always kind of happen that'll try and steer you off your course, is you have to be prepared to fight the fight. And so being more diverse and where you're placing your resources is really important. Absolutely. And owning the process yourself, not ever saying or not ever letting anyone say that you wouldn't be where you are because you took this design or you did this or you relied on someone else's work. It's no, we wanted to know that all of the work that we were putting in was unique and that no one could ever come and take that away from us again.
Yeah. So that was a big thing, not having a single point of failure.
The other thing is our manufacturers, making sure that we were building a better relationship, so that because during this time, as we had said, we were let down by our manufacturers and not receiving the product. And that almost, even if we weren't getting sued at the time, that could have sunk our business. We're very lucky that customer service was always a priority for us, but even understanding how important customer service is. We had a lot of customers that didn't want refunds, and they said they would wait for their products because we were quick to respond. We were quick to fix the problem. And as a company, when you're doing B2C and you're directly dealing with a consumer, they need to be happy, because they're the first to tell people when they're unhappy, but they're also the first to tell people when they're happy and when a company can be trusted. And so making sure that you're always trustworthy, transparent, open, and honest with your consumer is really important. And then also making sure that same thing with your manufacturer is that you're constantly communicating, so there's no confusion. You have to have eyes on every area of your business. Yeah.
Cool.
I think with a lot of e-commerce entrepreneurs, like it's kind of a common theme and quite concerning is that people don't own their manufacturing process. Like they kind of leave that up to somebody else and just really focusing on the marketing. And I think something that's differentiated us from a lot of other people in the e-commerce space who've started up in the past 5 or so years is, when we find a new supplier, we go to China and build a relationship with them or China or wherever we're manufacturing a product. We always go there and build a relationship with them because our supplier told us that they didn't tell us their machine was broken because they were scared to tell us. They didn't know what we were going to say. And if we had, maybe a better relationship with them, they would have known to come to us with something like that. So that was a big takeaway that we've done. And I think we followed up really, really well on it, is making sure that we're always involving them.
Yeah. And the same thing with our warehouse as well. So we don't own our warehouse, but we work with a third party, and it's the same thing. I have a weekly call and they know everything. They have too much information. Sometimes I tell them things that they don't need to know, but I would rather them know, hey, I placed an order. We're going to be getting it in 3 to 4 months, but I just want you to know I placed an order today so you can expect a shipment. I'll update you when it ships and all of that. And they're like, okay, great. Because now they know when things are coming. They know that they have to have the extra staff available to unpack, and that orders are going to increase because we have stuff coming in. And it's just making sure that everyone who is involved in your company has all of the information, whether it's in their domain or not. At the end of the day, you're all sales reps and you're all in charge of responding to the customer and being held accountable by the customer. And so we want to make sure that everyone that works with us has that information so they're empowered as well.
Right. I think too, it's like, building up personal relationships that can be leveraged, right? Like, the more you can build a personal relationship, the bigger that fulcrum is that you can pull when you really fucking need it, right? Like, I think that's like a huge thing as
massive.
well.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, because we're all just people, right? And people work with people, so it's at the end of the day, like if it's between you and someone else, and like you've had like 2 years of like just dropping in nice courtesies and stuff like that, it can
helping people.
Yeah.
Was there any other business lessons that you would write in an autobiography from this experience?
Always open your mail right away. Don't postpone it. That's a big one. And then I think the biggest thing is if you think it's wrong or if you have to ask permission, I know that's such a cliche, it probably is. So like we were looking at it, we were like, oh, like, do we sell this item? And then we're like, yeah, fuck it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Let's sell the item.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, okay. Like in hindsight, maybe just like do your research at the beginning. It's great that we did our research midway while all of this was happening. We realized, we're actually not in the wrong. But it probably would have been good to do that research beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Lots of good takeaways
for
people.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's a great story.
I hope that it helps someone, but I also hope that it doesn't, because I mean, I hope that
they don't
have to go through this. Yeah.
I
hope that you're not
but
Google searching how to get through a lawsuit.
You will be tested as an entrepreneur, and it's like I think it's a part of a big picture of how bad do you want it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a quit zone that's too early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just life testing you how big of a success do you want to be.
And you know what? We're about to hit 3 years as a business, and I mean, we absolutely could have given up a million times over, but we didn't. So I think that speaks to, our grit and our dedication to just getting shit done.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. It's a great story.
Sure.
And hopefully you'll have a good Black Friday and no lawsuits after.
Yeah, bless.
Black Friday is on its way.
It's on its way.
Facebook gods be with everybody. Start doing your Facebook ads, rain dances. Yeah. it's an intense time of year.
Yeah.
So before we wrap things up, Micha, now this is your third. Is it your third?
Black
it's your third Black Friday. What would you give advice to? Because this is Zach's first Black Friday in e-commerce space.
Yeah.
So I mean, what advice would you give to him?
Do not launch products the week of Black Friday. The biggest thing. Have all of your stuff done. I'm pretty sure you guys are on track with this.
Yeah. I think it's okay to launch them, but you can't be working on launching them. All the work has to be done beforehand.
So what I mean is they should already be in Shopify, just not active on the website yet.
Right. Yeah.
Don't be editing photos on Black Friday so you can upload it to a product page.
Right.
So it's okay to launch, but like all of the prep should be done by the beginning of November. Don't be
even
placing an
before
order in November for your inventory. If anything, we didn't even start early enough, and we started in August. We made our first plan in August of what we have to get done by Black Friday. Next year, I would say we should be starting in June.
Right.
Okay, I think it's a good analogy for that. A piece of advice is the Wolf of Wall Street cleaning the fishbowl on new issue day. That's the issue. So many people clean the fishbowl.
Yeah.
So many people are like, I just have to edit this picture for Black Friday.
It doesn't matter.
No. On new issue day, this is what you do.
It's too late. It's too late.
Yeah.
At this point, you're just making sure that the site doesn't crash and you're getting through.
You got to focus on high level problems.
Exactly.
You can't be getting caught up in majoring in minor things.
Are the ads working? Are customer service emails coming through? Are people able to purchase? Those are the big things. All of the prep should be well and done well before beginning of November.
I'd also say this is the most fruitful time of year to anybody. So it's like, make sure your focus is all in this.
Yeah.
It's not in something else, because a month from now, 2 weeks from now, it's all going to be over. And then you can focus on other things.
Exactly.
You know, and like, this is the time to grind.
What projects can wait? Yeah. What's high priority now, and what can be put on hold until after the new year?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's good.
Okay.
luck.
Well, fingers crossed.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure.
Woo!
All right. That's it. We'll have you on another time. Maybe we'll do a post Black Friday debrief or something.
Yeah.
In Lebanon.
Talk about lawsuit too. See you in Beirut, bitches.
All right.